You won't find evolution in the noise. You won't find it in the next swipe or the next post that tells you to just believe. If anything feels off lately, if the habits don't fit, if the days blur together and the spark feels buried, it's not because you're broken. It's because you've outgrown your current self. But growth doesn't knock. It burns. And if you're listening to this, it's because something inside you is already on fire. Not for more content, for change, for clarity, for the kind of shift that doesn't make you better, it makes you true. So stay here, not to be motivated, but to remember who you were before compromise and what you must do next to become who you were always meant to be. Let it burn. Let the old you go, and watch what rises. There comes a moment in every life where change is no longer a luxury, where pretending no longer works, where you look in the mirror and see not a person, but a mask, a version of yourself you've been maintaining out of fear, out of habit, out of comfort. And deep inside, something whispers, "This isn't who I'm meant to be." This is that moment. This is where evolution begins. Not with another goal, not with another book, not with a burst of motivation that disappears in 3 days, but with a fire you light yourself, a fire designed not to warm you, but to consume you. Because to evolve, you don't just grow, you burn. You burn the old identity, the excuses, the half-efforts, the version of you that keeps surviving in the shell of potential but never steps into the storm that forges greatness. You don't transform by tweaking the past. You evolve by setting it ablaze and standing in the smoke until you are stripped of everything that no longer serves who you're becoming. This isn't about change. Change is slow, negotiable, safe. This is about rebirth, and rebirth always comes after fire. Ask the phoenix. Ask the seed buried in soil. Ask the sculptor who strikes the first blow to unshaped stone. Creation begins in destruction. But destruction isn't chaos, it's intention. It's ruthless clarity. It's the decision that says, "I'm done carrying this version of myself into another year, another day, another hour." Because carrying what no longer fits is not noble. It's what's keeping you stuck. And make no mistake, you know what needs to burn. You've always known. That habit, that mindset, that fake humility disguised as procrastination, that comfort zone disguised as discipline, that voice that keeps saying, "This is just who I am." No, that is who you've been. And the longer you protect that identity, the longer you postpone your future. To evolve, you don't negotiate with the old self, you bury it. The man who wants to rise must first dig the grave of who he no longer wishes to be. Not with shame, not with regret, but with respect and finality. Because the past taught you, it forged your awareness, but it does not deserve to lead you. To evolve, you must become dangerous to your excuses. You must become allergic to your own mediocrity. You must become the architect of a future that has no room for who you used to be. You don't get to keep both. You don't get to stay comfortable and become powerful. You don't get to play small and expect impact. You don't get to keep the coping mechanisms that soothe your wounds and expect to lead a life that leaves a legacy. Growth isn't just uncomfortable, it's violent. It tears, it sheds, it breaks down walls inside of you that you forgot were even there. And the ones who evolve, they don't wait for permission to start swinging. They pick up the hammer and go to war with their former self. You want transformation? Then become the fire, become the match, become the hand that lights it. Because you can't evolve if you're still trying to be liked by the people who only know your outdated version. You can't evolve if you're still explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You can't evolve if your goals are still filtered through fear. So here's the truth. No one wants to say out loud, evolution is brutal. But so is staying stuck. One of them breaks you with purpose. The other drains you with silence. One will ask everything of you. The other will ask nothing and take it all anyway. Choose your pain, and choose wisely, because you don't get to rise without cost. But what you get in return is worth every scar. You get clarity. You get direction. You get to look in the mirror and see a warrior, not someone who's waiting to be rescued by better circumstances. You become the rescuer of your life, of your mind, of your future. Look around. Everyone's comfortable. Everyone's scrolling. Everyone's watching, waiting, floating in a cycle of someday. But not you. Not anymore. Because you've tasted the regret of not acting. You've felt the fatigue of half-living. You've worn the weight of playing small in a world that was begging you to rise. So today, here now, you make the decision. You burn the old blueprint. You torch the identity that no longer fits the mission. And you rebuild with focus, with fury, with faith. Because you don't evolve by hoping. You evolve by deciding, by becoming unavailable to anything less than what you're capable of. Burn the version of you that settled. Burn the version of you that needed applause. Burn the one who waited. Burn the one who knew what to do, but never did it. Let that version die with honor. Not with shame, not with guilt, but with gratitude. He got you here, but he can't take you further. And now, you rise. When you burn the old you, it won't be quiet. It will scream. It will cling. It will call you back like an old friend, not because it loves you, but because it knows you. It knows how to keep you tame, predictable, comfortable. But comfort is not your friend. It's the sedative that killed more dreams than failure ever could. And if you want to become someone the world can't ignore, you have to do something most people never will let go of: who you think you are, to become who you were born to be. That doesn't come from books. That doesn't come from vision boards or New Year's resolutions. That comes from identity death. Because if the old you can survive the new decisions you're making, you're not evolving, you're entertaining growth. And entertained growth never transforms. It flickers, then fades. To truly evolve, you need to act in ways that confuse your past. You need to break your own patterns so violently that your old habits can't find you. That's how the shift begins. In the decisions that feel unnatural but are necessary. It starts with waking up before the world does. Not because it's trendy, but because it's quiet. And in that quiet, your mind is pure, uncontaminated by doubt, by noise, by distraction. And you feed it the truth. You feed it what it's been starving for: focus, vision, clarity. You remind yourself, I am not that man anymore. I am not that woman anymore. I move different now. I think different now. I am different now. And every morning you repeat it not as a mantra, but as a standard. Then you take action. Real action. Not busy work. Not performative effort. Not look at me activity. Movement with weight. You lift. You train. You learn. You delete. You build. You do the things your old self avoided. Because those things are now your compass. They tell you you're no longer drifting. Every time you act against your former comfort, you stack proof that you've changed. And when the proof stacks high enough, you stop doubting. Because identity is not just built on belief, it's built on evidence. And then there's resistance. Always. Because the old you doesn't go down quietly. He'll whisper, just this once. She'll say, take a break. But you'll recognize that voice. You'll see it for what it is, a ghost from a life you buried. And you'll smile. Because resistance isn't a sign you're failing. It's a sign you're forging something new. It's the heat of the fire. It's the tension that forms the diamond. It's proof you're no longer living as who you were, but as who you must become. Do you think Ford didn't hear resistance when he told the world he'd put a car in every garage? Do you think Carnegie didn't feel doubt while building steel empires from nothing? Do you think Edison didn't question his sanity After thousands of failures, they weren't gods. They were men, with vision, with fire, with an obsession so rooted in purpose that it burned through every obstacle, even themselves. And that's the secret. They weren't just building products. They were building people, themselves, over and over, version after version, until the world couldn't ignore what they became. You want that? Then build that. You're not just building a business, you're building a mind, a rhythm, a spiritual backbone that doesn't bend at resistance, but sharpens in it. You want money? Build discipline first. You want power? Build self-respect first. You want peace? Burn the habits that make you anxious and rebuild your environment in silence. You want freedom? Then become the kind of person who no longer needs to be reminded to rise. Let the old version of you stay asleep. Let them scroll. Let them talk. Let them project. They're not your enemy. They're your proof. Proof that you've outgrown the box the world placed you in. And you don't explain growth. You don't apologize for it. You embody it. With your habits, with your presence, with your silence. Because when the shift is real, you no longer chase people. They feel you. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being relentless. You'll fall. You'll slip. You'll feel the pull of the old world tugging at your ankles. But this time, you get up without negotiation. You get up faster, smarter, sharper. Because now, even your failure is focused. Even your setbacks serve the mission. And eventually, there is no going back. Not because you burned the bridge, but because the old you can't survive at the altitude you now operate from. Evolution is not about force. It's about elevation. The air gets thinner up here. The noise dies off. The crowd fades. And what's left is you, the real you. Not the version that's been trying to be everything for everyone. Not the version that needed validation before action. The builder, the leader, the one who doesn't ask for directions anymore because he became the map. The one who no longer fears the fire because she is the fire. There's a reason why so few ever evolve. Not because they can't, but because they refuse to let go. They keep trying to build a new life with the same hands that cling to the old one. But evolution has a price. Attachment must die. Attachment to approval. Attachment to who you think you are. Attachment to stories that no longer serve your future. And that's the part most people run from. They want change without loss. They want transformation without grief. But growth is grief. It's grieving the version of you who needed excuses. Grieving the identity that needed validation. Grieving the stories you told yourself to survive, even if they were never true. And in that grief is power. Because what you grieve, you outgrow. And what you release, you replace with something stronger. With truth. The truth is you don't need permission. You don't need to be more talented. You don't need another degree. You need to become unavailable for the identity that's been keeping you predictable. You want to evolve. Start saying no. No to the moods that used to run you. No to the habits that steal your focus. No to the conversations that keep you small. No to the old script that says this is who I've always been. Because here's what no one tells you. Your greatest breakthroughs won't come from addition. They'll come from subtraction. Remove the noise, and clarity shows up. Remove the distraction, and discipline becomes effortless. Remove the stories, and identity rewrites itself. You don't need more. You need less, but with more intensity. More presence, more ownership, more fire per inch of movement. That's evolution. It's not about chasing a million things. It's about becoming the person who makes one move and it shifts the ground. That only happens when you stop building on clutter and start building from clarity. Think about it. Nature evolves by cutting. The snake sheds its skin. The caterpillar lets itself dissolve inside a cocoon. It doesn't add wings to its old form. It breaks down, reconstructs, emerges. You think you're any different? You can't keep your cocoon and expect to fly. You can't keep your patterns and expect new outcomes. You can't keep your comfort and expect to become something dangerous. Dangerous to doubt. Dangerous to limitation. Dangerous to the version of you that kept your potential locked behind fear. And this moment, this is your cocoon. Not because it's safe, but because it's sacred. The place where the old dies and the real you gets built from the ashes. But only if you stay inside it long enough to emerge different. Most people don't. They try for a week. They resist the discomfort. They open the cocoon halfway through the transformation and wonder why nothing's changed. Because nothing will until you go all in. So make a decision, a real one. Not the kind you post, not the kind you announce, the kind you make in silence, in solitude. The kind that sits in your bones and says, I'm not doing this for applause. I'm not doing this for hype. I'm doing this because there's a version of me buried under hesitation, and I'm ready to dig him out with fire if I have to. That kind of decision, it doesn't fade, it rewires. And once it takes root, your habits shift. Your speech shifts. Your environment shifts. Your life bends around your standards, not your feelings. That's the evolution. When discipline becomes your new dopamine. When stillness becomes your strength. When you stop needing to explain your growth and start embodying it. And the world starts to feel it. Not because you're louder, but because you're clearer. And clarity in a world of noise is magnetic. You walk into a room differently when you've burned the parts of you that used to shrink in it. You speak differently when you've stopped begging for agreement. You build differently when failure is no longer your fear because staying the same is far worse. That's how you lead yourself. And once you learn to lead yourself, you don't need hype. You don't need a pep talk. You don't need to be told what to do every morning. You just do it. Because you no longer wake up hoping to become someone, you wake up as someone. Someone who earns their peace. Someone who trains their mind like a weapon. Someone who guards their time like a king guards a crown. Someone who doesn't need to scream their goals because they've become the evidence. Let others waste their days trying to feel good. You're not here to feel good. You're here to become solid. Because when you become solid, you don't chase results. They orbit you. Not because of magic, but because of math. Because repetition rewires identity. Because systems shape standards. Because habits are the scaffolding of a powerful life. And you don't rise by shouting, I'm ready. You rise by doing the work that proves it. And the work isn't flashy. It's not glamorous. It's not a highlight reel. It's the decisions no one sees. It's the moments where quitting whispers and you whisper louder. It's the friction you stop fearing. Because now you understand that friction is how diamonds are made. And you are in the making. A weapon, a force, a builder of something unshakable. So burn the old you. Every lie, every comfort, every coping mechanism dressed up as logic. Let it burn. So something real can rise. The most dangerous version of you is the one that no longer fears being misunderstood. Because when you evolve, you will lose things. You will lose people. You will lose habits. You will lose identities that used to define you. But evolution never subtracts without a purpose. It doesn't steal. It reveals. What's real? What's necessary? What's aligned? And what you thought you needed was never meant to survive the next chapter. Let it go, not with bitterness, with reverence, with the understanding that you are not abandoning your past. You are building on it with stronger bricks, cleaner hands, clearer eyes. You don't evolve by adding layers. You evolve by removing the lies. Lies like, I'll never be disciplined. That's just how I've always been. I need to be in the mood. If it's meant to be, it will happen. It's too late for me. No, it is only too late when you decide the past has more authority than your future. It is only too late when you stop choosing. And you are still choosing right now. Every second you breathe, you are voting for the man or woman you become. So vote with intention. Vote with execution. Vote like your legacy depends on it, because it does. The people we remember, Lincoln, Edison, Mandela, Carnegie, they weren't just intelligent. They were committed to growth, to something bigger than comfort. They didn't wait to evolve until conditions were perfect. They burned the old version of themselves when no one was watching. Edison didn't wait for the world to believe in light. He created it in the dark. That's you. You don't need applause. You need alignment. You don't need more time. You need more truth. And here's the truth. If you want to rise, you have to suffer differently. Not the kind of suffering that comes from avoidance, guilt, overthinking, and regret, but the kind that comes from discipline, from choosing the harder path and doing it again tomorrow, and the day after that, until it becomes who you are. Because the old you avoided pain by escaping. The new you feels the pressure and executes anyway. You don't flinch now. You don't freeze now. You don't retreat into distraction and call it a break. You face yourself every day, and in doing so you gain something no scroll can offer: peace earned by personal power. And let's be honest, you've tasted that before. Even briefly. You felt that click, that sacred momentum. That day when you rose early, moved your body, nourished your mind, honored your craft. And for that moment, you didn't need motivation, because you were the fire. That's not gone. It didn't die. It just got buried under habits that don't belong to you anymore. So dig. Strip it back. Rebuild your rhythm like a warrior sharpening a blade. Because your life doesn't need another plan. It needs a pulse, and you are the one who sets it. You don't need more permission. You need more silence, more stillness, because in that stillness, you will hear something the world has been trying to drown out. Your own voice. The one that remembers what you came here to do. The one that whispers when the noise fades. You weren't born for you were born for impact. You weren't built to blend in. You were built to break through. And that voice, it doesn't shout. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg for your attention. It just waits for you to stop running and finally listen. Listen to what hurts. Listen to what excites you. Listen to what you keep avoiding, because that's where the work is. That's where the next version of you lives. Not in your comfort, not in your routines, in your resistance, in your edge. Most people live and die in the middle, avoiding the edge, avoiding the fire, avoiding the voice that says, "This isn't all you were meant to be." But you didn't come this far to stay neutral. You came to evolve. And that means stepping to the edge again and again until the edge becomes your new floor. You've been playing chess with yourself, sacrificing your potential just to protect your past. But the game changes today, not because you found some magic formula, but because you finally got tired of your own hesitation. You're not looking for hype, you're looking for fire. And fire, real fire, doesn't come from outside. It comes when you declare, "I'm done building in hesitation. I'm done filtering my ambition. I'm done apologizing for my clarity." The old me would have folded. The new me doesn't even flinch. This is your becoming, and becoming doesn't wait. So build your life like it's war, not against the world, not against your past, but against the inertia that wants you average. Build your body like it carries a mission, because it does. Build your mind like it's a weapon, because it's either trained or it's tamed. Build your habits like they're sacred, because they are. Because what you repeat is who you become, and what you allow is what becomes law in your life. From now on, no more weak laws, no more soft standards, no more excuses with eloquent vocabulary. Only fire, only forward, only evolution. From this moment forward, your life is no longer about improvement. It's about rebirth. Because improvement suggests something is still salvageable. Rebirth says, burn it all. Rebuild from what matters. And what matters now is alignment. No more chasing goals that don't feel like yours. No more checking boxes that impress people you wouldn't trade lives with. No more climbing ladders leaning on walls you never asked to stand beside. From now on, your time is sacred. Your energy is guarded. Your circle is selective. And your standards are non-negotiable. Because when you evolve, your entire life begins to edit itself. People will fall away. Not because they're bad, but because they're no longer relevant to your rhythm. You'll feel the old habits try to sneak back in, not because they're strong, but because they're familiar. And you'll feel the pull of comfort, not because you're weak, but because comfort knows your name. But you're not answering anymore. You're not available for what shrinks you. You're not returning to environments that reward your mediocrity. You're not interested in being almost disciplined, almost focused, almost transformed. Almost is over. Because here's what you've realized. You can't access the next level with maybe. You can't claim your future with hopefully. You can't become legendary with part-time passion. So you burn the maybes. You bury the hopefully. And you make one ruthless decision. This is who I am now. This is what I stand for. This is what I do with or without applause with, or without comfort with, or without clarity. And you build a system that protects that identity. Because willpower is temporary, but structure is eternal. You want evolution. Stop relying on emotion. Start relying on ritual. Make your morning sacred. Make your movement non-negotiable. Make your mission visible. Make your stillness unbreakable. Because the old you waited to feel ready. The evolved you creates readiness through action. The old you needed reminders. The evolved, you became the reminder for everyone else. The old you lived in reactivity. The evolved you lives in ritual and repetition and relentless intent. You don't need more inspiration. You need more proof. Proof that you are who you say you are. Proof in the silence. Proof in the reps. Proof in the hours logged while everyone else is still debating their next move. Because the people who build empires, they don't just move. They move without negotiation. They don't wait for praise. They work in silence and let their results be undeniable. That's what you're building now. A rhythm that does not flinch. A mind that does not scatter. A soul that doesn't depend on circumstance to stay on fire. You've spent enough time analyzing. Enough time strategizing. Enough time preparing. This is the season of execution. Not because you've got it all figured out, but because hesitation has become a heavier burden than risk ever was. You've read the books. You've watched the videos. You've consumed the content. And now you must become the content. You must become the walking embodiment of your own philosophy. Not a theorist, a builder, not a dreamer, a doer. And yes, you'll be misunderstood. You'll be judged. You'll be called obsessed. But obsession is what separates the one who wants it from the one who takes it. Because the truth is this: you cannot casually evolve. You do not stumble into greatness. You burn for it. You bleed for it. You sacrifice for it, not because it's noble, but because it's required. You're not just changing your schedule. You're changing your relationship with what you tolerate. You used to tolerate delay. Now you move. You used to tolerate weakness. Now you trend. You used to tolerate low standards. Now they offend you. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. That's what happens when you stop entertaining the old you and start embodying who you were always meant to become. Because deep down you've always known this version existed. The sharp version, the disciplined version, the laser-focused, high-frequency, locked-in version of you that doesn't quit when it gets quiet. He's not some fantasy. She's not some future state. They're already inside you waiting. But they only rise when you stop negotiating with your limits. Limits aren't real. They're habits in disguise. Repetition builds identity, and your identity is your thermostat. You will never exceed the standards you refuse to raise. So raise them. And don't explain it. Just live it. Don't announce it. Just become it. Let the results speak. Let the habits echo. Let the silence roar louder than the opinions ever could. And when they ask you how you did it, you won't need a story. You'll just look them in the eye and say, I burned the old me, and I built what was left. Because that's what this is. Not hype, not theory, a funeral. For the version of you that tolerated less. A burial. For the patterns that kept you broke, tired, confused. A resurrection of the you that isn't scared anymore. You're not waiting for proof. You're becoming the proof. You're not hoping for clarity. You're forging it in the silence, in the sweat, in the thousands of invisible decisions no one will ever applaud, but everyone will feel. This is not the season for balance. This is the season for extreme alignment. Not moderation, but obsession. Not multitasking, but mastery. You want to evolve, then go all in. On fewer things, with more intensity, more clarity, more integrity. Because greatness doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from doing the right things relentlessly. Most people dip their toes. They sample. They dabble. They keep the old life close, just in case the new one doesn't work out. But evolution doesn't honor hesitation. It rewards those who burn the plan B. Those who say, this is the only option now. Forward. Ask yourself, who are you when there's no safety net? When there's no one clapping? When it's just you and the grind and the mirror? Because the mirror never lies. It reflects what you allow. It reflects what you've tolerated. It reflects what you've trained, not what you intended. And for most people, that reflection is uncomfortable. Not because they lack potential, but because they lack proof. They say they're focused, but their habits say otherwise. They say they want success, but their daily rhythm betrays them. So now it's your turn to face the mirror and tell the truth. Not the convenient truth, the real one. The truth that says, I've been wasting time. I've been running from discomfort. I've been negotiating with my lower self and calling it patience. And then you do the most courageous thing a person can do. You stop lying to yourself, because that's where all evolution begins. Not with motivation, with honesty. Once you see it clearly, once you admit where you've been soft, scattered, scared, you reclaim your power. Not because you fixed it all, but because you refuse to hide anymore. Hiding is the habit of the old you. It hides behind overthinking. It hides behind perfectionism. It hides behind being realistic. But you don't need realism right now. You need fire. You need to stare your potential in the face and say, I see you, and I'm done delaying. Because hesitation has stolen more dreams than failure ever has. You will fail. You will stumble. But those are signs that you are moving. The only real failure is staying the same and calling it maturity. You think maturity is getting cautious. No, but true maturity is being unshakable. It's being so locked in that your emotions no longer dictate your execution. It's building a life so structured that your highest self has no choice but to show up daily. That's how evolution happens, not in chaos, but in calculated aggression. In daily reps, daily stillness, daily defiance of who you used to be. It's when you tell yourself, this is what I do now. I don't miss. I don't fold. I don't wait. And over time, you become unrecognizable to the version of you who used to settle. They won't understand it. The people around you. They'll think you're distant, cold, intense, good. Let them feel the shift. Let them misunderstand your silence. Let them question your consistency. Let them label your discipline as extreme. Because they only see the external change, they don't know what it cost you to get here. They didn't feel the nights you wanted to quit, the mornings you didn't believe in yourself, the inner war you had to win before the world ever saw you move. Let them talk. While they're scrolling, you're stacking. While they're hoping, you're executing. While they're dreaming, you're building. Not because it's easy, but because you made a promise. To yourself, to the future, to the people who will one day thank you for not quitting. And that promise, it's sacred now. So when the resistance comes, and it will, you don't collapse, you don't retreat. You remember, this pain is not punishment, it's proof. Proof that I'm not playing with it anymore. Proof that I'm moving differently. The old you wanted growth without cost. The evolved you pay gladly, because you know that nothing is more expensive than regret. And regret doesn't just show up at the end of life. It builds quietly in the little compromises, the quiet quitting. The days you say, I'll start tomorrow one too many times. But today isn't tomorrow. Today is the line. You've crossed it. You've buried the version of you that begged for easy. And you've stepped into the fire because you finally understood the fire doesn't destroy you. It defines you. It burns what doesn't belong. It shapes what was formless. It reveals what's real. That's why you welcome it now. You run toward the discomfort. You crave the pressure. Because pressure doesn't crush you anymore. It's your training ground. Every challenge is your invitation to become sharper. Every obstacle is your opportunity to step deeper into your next identity. And when that identity locks in, when it's no longer something you try to be, but simply, you become unstoppable. Not because the world changed, but because you did. This is what it takes to evolve conviction, clarity, consistency. Not for a day, not for a week, but until the old you has no air left to breathe. Until you look around and realize this isn't motivation anymore. This is who I am now. Not perfect, not superhuman, just present, deliberate, free. And in that freedom there is peace, the kind of peace that doesn't come from comfort, but from the war you finally won within. This peace isn't found. It's forged. Forged through the repetition of choosing power over passivity. Forged through the silent moments when no one is watching and you show up anyway. Forged through the discomfort you lean into instead of run from. This is not the peace of avoidance, it's the peace of alignment. Of knowing deep in your bones that you are doing exactly what must be done. No more overthinking, no more explaining, no more shrinking to fit a version of life that was never meant for you. This is evolution in motion, and now it's your new baseline. From here on, your life isn't about chasing moments. It's about becoming a movement. Your presence becomes felt not because you're loud, but because you're clear. Your actions speak before your words. Your consistency builds credibility that needs no marketing. Because people don't follow ideas. They follow identity. And when your identity is locked in every room you enter, adjusts. Not because you're pretending, but because you've become undeniable. Undeniable in your discipline. Undeniable in your integrity. Undeniable in your decision. That decision changes everything. Not because it rewrites your past, but because it redeems it. Every mistake you made, now it's fuel. Every failure you lived through, now it's part of your credibility, not baggage foundation. The evolved you doesn't run from their story. They own it. They carry it like armor, not shame. Because they've done the work. They've earned the right to stand tall in the same place they once fell. This is the paradox of evolution. You must destroy the illusion of who you were to finally become who you are. No more waiting. No more wishing someone would notice your potential. No one is coming. And that's the greatest news you'll ever hear. Because it means you're free. No more asking for approval. No more hoping someone opens the door. You are the door now. You don't knock. You don't wait. You don't wonder. You build until the world has no choice but to notice. And by the time they do, you won't need them, because by then you'll already be walking in what you once begged for. That's the shift. You're no longer driven by desperation. You're driven by standard. The bar doesn't move anymore. You move because of the bar. You don't question the mission because you are the mission now. Everything becomes sacred. Your mornings, your workouts, your focus, your silence, your relationships, your word. Because you've burned the old you. And from that fire something else emerged, not better, but truer. No more pretending to be something. Now you just are. You are someone who executes, who listens to conviction over mood, who honors the calling more than the craving. And yes, you'll still feel fear, but fear is not your steering wheel anymore. It's just background noise. You hear it, but you don't obey it. You obey discipline. You obey vision. You obey the vow you made when you buried the version of you that used to need a reason to rise. Now you don't need a reason. You need a mission. And you've got one. You were born to build, to lead, to break generational chains and shatter internal ceilings. To become the one your bloodline talks about, not because you got lucky, but because you got clear. Clear on who you are, clear on who you're not, clear on the cost and willing to pay it. You're no longer asking life to be easier. You're asking yourself to be stronger. And every day you answer that ask through your habits, your systems, your presence. Your energy now is different, calm, quiet, convicted. Not because life is easy, but because your foundation is unshakable. You've seen what it feels like to be inconsistent. You've lived through the mental fog of almost, the agony of almost following through, the exhaustion of overthinking instead of executing. And now you've tasted something cleaner, something harder, yes, but lighter, the discipline, the simplicity, the power of being all in. That taste, you'll never go back. You can't, not because it's forbidden, but because your standard won't allow it. That's what this fire was always for. Not to destroy you, to build you, to eliminate distraction, weakness, noise, and negotiation. So what's left? Clarity, conviction, structure, stillness, and all of it yours. Earned, fought for, forged. Let them wonder where you went. Let them speculate. Let them assume you fell off, disappeared, lost the drive. Say nothing. Just stay silent. Build in the dark. Stack your reps. Train your mind. Tighten your circle. Sharpen your edge. And when you re-emerge, you won't need to announce anything. Your life will speak for itself. Not with volume, but with proof. So if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. If you've been waiting for someone to believe in you, stop. That's your job now. And you've already started. You chose to press play. You chose to listen all the way through. You chose not to scroll away from the uncomfortable truth. And now you choose what comes next. Not someday. Not soon. Now. Burn the old you, the timid one, the distracted one, the inconsistent one. Lay them to rest not with regret, but with reverence. They got you here. But now you go further. This is your turning point. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you got exact. Exact about who you are. Exact about what matters. Exact about the fire you're willing to walk through to get there. The old you. He didn't know how to make decisions like this. She would have hesitated here. But that version is gone. Burned. And in the ashes, what rises is you, real, raw, unshakable. Built not by chance, but by choice. From now on, your movement carries weight. Because it's no longer random. It's intentional. You don't just take action. You take aligned action. You don't chase validation. You move from vision. And every step you take now echoes with clarity. Because you no longer ask, "What do I feel like doing?" You ask, "What must be done?" And then you do it. Because that's what evolved minds do. They don't consult emotion. They command it. They direct it. They turn feelings into fuel and pain into presence. And when the hard days come, and they will, you don't flinch. You anchor. You go back to the moment you decided, this is it. No more versions. No more almost. No more doubting my capacity to rise. You return to the vow you made in silence. And you honor it not just with words, but with rhythm. With early mornings. With deep work. With clean boundaries and unrelenting self-respect. Because discipline is no longer a strategy. It's who you are now. You no longer apologize for your focus. You no longer shrink for other people's comfort. You no longer lower your volume just to fit in rooms that can't hold your frequency. This new version of you isn't louder. They're calmer, more rooted, more certain. Because when you're anchored in who you are, you don't need to convince the world. You just live. And the world adjusts. This is the power of identity locked in. It speaks before you speak. It leads before you lead. It moves people before you even open your mouth. But don't forget where it came from. It came from the fire. The burn. The quiet decision to let go of what was never worthy of who you're becoming. It came from the repetition no one saw. The nights you rewrote the blueprint. The mornings you showed up when no one expected you to. The silence you embraced when everyone else chose noise. That's the real evolution, not the glow-up, not the results, but the soul shift. The moment you stopped needing to be different and just became it. You used to chase potential. Now you chase proof. You used to wish for discipline. Now you wake up with it in your bones. You used to seek permission. Now you build your own path, brick by focused brick. And that path? It's not for everyone. It's not crowded. But it's clear. Because clarity is the new currency. And you've earned it by burning what wasn't yours. By releasing the version of you that was built on survival distraction and false urgency. You no longer need chaos to feel alive. You've built peace and called it power. So now, what do? You protect this? You protect your rhythm like your life depends on it. Because it does. You protect your mornings. You protect your word. You protect your progress, not with fear, but with intensity. Because what you've built isn't fragile, but it is sacred, and the sacred must be guarded. Not with walls, but with standards. Not with ego, but with truth. And the truth is, the old you served a purpose. He got you here. She helped you survive. But the evolved you creates, builds, leads. Not because you're better, but because you've become whole. So the next time you feel tired, tempted to slip, remember what it cost to change. Remember what it took to walk through the fire. Remember the price of your own evolution and refuse to discount it. This isn't just a new routine. It's a resurrection. This isn't a reset. It's a rebirth. And from this moment forward, you never move the same again. You're not scrolling for purpose anymore. You're living on purpose. You're not hoping to attract clarity. You're moving with clarity. You're not consuming identity. You've become it because you've earned it. Not in public, not for praise, but in private, when no one clapped, when no one saw. And now that version of you, the builder, the warrior, the focused one, is no longer a glimpse. It's your baseline. And so here's how we end. You don't go back. You don't explain your fire to those who fear the flame. You don't seek approval for what's already been decided. You stay locked in. You stay lethal. You stay whole. And when the world asks how you changed so much, don't answer. Just smile. Because the ones who evolve don't explain it. They live it. And the world catches up or gets left behind. If something inside you stirred, don't ignore it. That wasn't motivation. That was memory. The memory of who you could be, if you finally stopped carrying who you were. Evolution doesn't announce itself. It doesn't beg for attention. It happens in the quiet, in the space between who you've been and who you're becoming. And now, you know. The fire was never there to destroy you. It was waiting for your permission to begin. So don't just feel inspired. Feel responsible for the rhythm you live by, for the identity you refuse to abandon, for the version of you that doesn't need another sign, just a decision. You've seen the path now. You've stood at the edge. All that's left is to walk through the flame. And when they ask how you changed so much, say nothing. Just live like someone who did what had to be done and never looked back.